Consolation, also known as comfort, was written in the 16th century by Gerolamo Cardano, a physician and philosopher shaped by loss, uncertainty, and change. These words were first carried into English in 1573 by Thomas Bedingfield, with the support of Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, and guided towards readers by Thomas Churchyard. Each understood that counsel kept private offers no help, and that thought, to be useful, must be shared. This modern rendering follows the same intention. We who speak from centuries beyond their own offer thanks. You wrote in a world where consolation was not a luxury, but a necessity, where plague, exile, political danger, and sudden loss were familiar companions. Yet you believed, each in your own way, that reason could still answer grief, that language could still reach the afflicted, and that the mind, if rightly governed, need not be conquered by circumstance. Because you chose preservation over privacy, circulation over concealment, and generosity over fear, these words endured. We, your modern beneficiaries, live in a different age, but not in a gentler one. The names of our troubles have changed. Their weight has not. And so this work speaks still, not as a relic, but as a companion. May this modern translation honor your intentions, not to instruct from above, but to walk beside, not to deny sorrow, but to steady it, not to promise ease, but to restore proportion, courage, and clarity. If there is gratitude due for this comfort, it belongs first to you, and now at last, to all who listen. Cardano's Comfort, Book 1, on the Necessity of Consolation. Among the many ancient works destroyed in the barbarian wars, one loss, above all, invites regret: the books of comfort written by Cicero after the death of his daughter. In every other matter, he showed himself more than human, and here, writing not from theory, not from invention, not about the suffering of others, but from his own grief, his own shaken mind, he must have surely written with uncommon power. For consolation does not depend on eloquence alone. Even without ornament, it carries reason within it, and it tests itself. When a mind is wise and practices Cicero's turns itself towards sorrow, we may assume the work he shaped would have exceeded all expectation. Yet that book is lost. And so, though so many noble works have vanished, we have thought it fitting to speak of consolation ourselves, not because the subject cannot be praised too highly, but because it is necessary. And in things that must be had, it is better to have the least than nothing at all. Consider this. Houses are necessary. Those who cannot afford stone palaces live in wood and clay. If not that, then a cottage. If not that, then even a hut or a cave. Anything, rather than being unhoused. So it is with consolation. There is no one alive who does not need it. And in this matter, anything is better than nothing. For one cannot be counted happy in every respect. Even if we are spared all outward calamity, the fear of death alone would still trouble us. And beyond that, how many evils surround us? So many that the cloud of error is lifted, truth itself cannot be seen, nor our earthly grief eased. Other needs, once satisfied, cease to trouble us. Hunger ends with food, thirst with drink, labor with rest, but the memory of suffering is different. It settles. It multiplies. And without right persuasion, it does not release the mind. From one anxious thought to another, or from one misfortune to the next, it drives us onward, never resting. And for this reason this book was written, not because it will remove all care from others, but because in writing it I find some relief myself, and that alone is reason enough. They say Asclepiodotus could paint skillfully without color, so here, without ornament, without rhetorical craft, I will speak plainly. I will show how greatly human beings err in life, in judgment, in opinion, and in will. Some things prove themselves so clearly that they require no argument at all, and often The more art we use to persuade, the less we are believed. No one paints marble pillars, no one colors alabaster vessels. We decorate what nature left rough, not what already shines. Nor is this work as vast as it first appears. For although miseries are many, not all require medicine. Some sufferings are willingly chosen. Who would attempt to comfort Regulus when neither his children's tears nor his family pleas could persuade him to remain in Rome rather than return to captivity? So too the martyrs, George, Paul, Lawrence, and countless others, whose suffering needed no consolation, only witness. There are also labors that even the faint-hearted gladly accept, for glory, for love, for ambition, for hope. Some serve princes, some labor for learning, some pursue trade or power. So little do these burdens weigh on them that once removed, they grieve their absence. Others choose hardship entirely, solitude, fasting, discipline, for the hope of eternal life. And others suffer gladly, for pleasure itself. Harvesters dance when the pipe sounds. Gamblers leave the fire despite the cold. And lovers risk life itself for desire. To list all such cases would be tedious. Instead, we will only speak of those evils that men truly flee, and the first among them, old age. Not a calamity, but a gift of nature, and yet so many bear it unwillingly that Cicero himself wrote on it with care. Among the three things we call evil, there are three kinds. Common calamities, those shared by many, private calamities suffered alone, and compounded calamities, where many misfortunes strike at once. And so we begin here with private evils, not to deny suffering, but to show this, that fortune, good or ill, has no power over a blessed life. For the fruit of happiness, as Plato says, rests in virtue. And yet, if one considers how fragile, how brief, how uncertain human life is, one sees how little reason there is to torment oneself in adversity. If life is to be lamented, then it must always be lamented. If not always, then never. If life is short, fragile, uncertain, and burdened, then the question is not why do we suffer, but why do we add to it? For consider this. What misery is greater than rising from bed each morning uncertain whether you will return to it at night? Or lying down to sleep uncertain whether life will last until morning? Our bodies are brittle, our strength is weak, our lives are uncertain, and for this reason, no name suits humanity more aptly than the one used by the Spaniards. They call a man a shadow, for nothing passes more quickly, nothing is less assured. Sometimes when I reflect on this, if Christian teaching did not forbid the thought, I might imagine that human souls were placed into bodies as a punishment, that no hell were needed afterward because the life itself would suffice. So vast is the weight of worldly suffering, and yet I reject this thought. For on closer reflection, I see that in this life nothing can be called purely good or purely evil. Here I agree with the philosophers who held that all things rest in opinion. For what custom, what law, what judgment is so fixed that it does not meet resistance? Philosophers would not have argued so long if truth were easily grasped. No one disputes that swans are white and ravens black. But good and evil, how much speech, how much dispute, how much contention has grown from those words alone? This reminds me of an ancient fable. It is said that when Jupiter created the world, he saw that without reward and punishment, humankind would fall into disorder and despise even the gods. So he commanded Vulcan to forge two vessels, one for good, one for evil. Both were given wings so they could move swiftly among the mortals. But Pandora, curious and patient, opened the vessels. Good flew upward to heaven, evil fell downward to the depths. In the vessel of evil, only hope remained, and in the vessel of good, only suspicion. When Jupiter learned this, he cast the empty vessels down to earth, and mortals, eager, mistaken, embraced them, believing that they had received both good and evil, when in truth they received neither, only opinions. And so it is. Good has ascended, evil has descended. What remains to us is suspicion of good and hope amid evil. Like travelers at night mistaking cold iron for a serpent, we frighten ourselves with what is not truly there. This fable may be invented, yet it teaches as clearly as any learned lecture. Earthly joys are unstable, but the world to come, there, all is assured. Affliction is not a cruelty, it is a trial. As Scripture says, because you were accepted by God, it was necessary that you be tested. A loving father restrains his child not from malice, but from care. So then, if the glory of heaven is eternal, great, and certain, why should we grieve so deeply over what is brief, mortal, and passing? If we rejoice so loudly in worldly successes whose reward is small and whose duration short, what joy should we reserve for what cannot be taken? This alone would end all need for consolation, if faith were firm. For who would not exchange this fragile life for one everlasting, this troubled life for one at peace? But where belief falters, hope falters also, and where hope fades, misery grows. Yet even without faith, still this is true. There is scarcely any misery so great that it cannot turn toward benefit. Adversity has lifted some, prosperity has ruined others. And this uncertainty is not an argument against life, but a reason to understand it. Consider Job, first blessed with health, family, wealth, and honor, then stripped of all. Friends turned cruel, the body itself rebelled, and yet fortune returned to him in greater measure than before, not to teach expectation but to show variability. For happiness does not grow from fortune, but from the governance of the mind. As the poet says, a guiltless conscience does not grow pale with fear. Reflect on this. What profit is there in adding sorrow to sorrow? What does grief accomplish except to weaken judgment and block counsel? We must bear adversity patiently or not, but bear it we must. So wisdom lies not in avoiding suffering, but in meeting it rightly. Those who suffer bravely gain compassion. Those who collapse invite suspicion. Ag of Sparta, condemned unjustly, said to the servant who wept for him, I am now more worthy of life than those who force me to die. And he met death unshaken. So too Scaevola, whose courage won mercy where submission would have earned cruelty. So too others, saved not by pleading but by dignity. A man is nothing but his mind. If the mind is discontented, everything is misery. If the mind is at peace, even hardship loosens its grip. I recall a wealthy man, driven mad, who grasped straw and feared starvation because it held no grain. Was it hunger that tormented him, or his mind? Another believed himself made of glass and lived in constant terror. Was anyone more miserable, though no harm touched him? We are often the authors of our own suffering, and pride blinds us to this. Each person credits success to wisdom and failure to fortune. And when fortune is not enough, they blame demons. Princes fall into this most of all, surrounded by flatterers who ensure they learn nothing. How much better to credit success to God and failure to ourselves, for the fool's greatest error is believing himself wise. Even Socrates claimed to know only this, that he knew nothing. Every joy carries its burden. Glory breeds envy, wisdom requires labor, wealth brings care, children bring worry, feasting brings illness, Authority brings fear, rest invites contempt. And so everyone suffers something. Poverty, loss, illness, fear, injustice, family, enemies, and strangely, even perfect happiness is itself a burden. Consider Polycrates, who, overwhelmed by fortune, threw his prized ring into the sea, hoping for loss, only to have it returned in a fish. What pleasure truly do princes take in feasts once delicacy dulls the tongue? Pleasure requires contrast. Joy requires sorrow. Without adversity, happiness cannot be known. Time itself is medicine. It dulls grief, erodes injury, it softens memory. Time wears all things away. And what time will do for you eventually, you can begin to do for yourself now, through patience, through learning, through modesty. Imagine your troubles already past. Hope for what remains, and remember, compared to eternity, this life is less than a moment. What difference will remain 50 years after death between king and beggar, between honored and forgotten, between happy and unhappy? Only the mind endures, and therefore guard it well. End of Book 1.